Josh here today, and he said, boy, I was getting text letters.
Mr. Joyce, we would, excuse me, but we would all really be happy.
Get on that. Let's stand for the pledge of
Discount?
allegiance.
Gotta try.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
See, I tried to put it all together. That's the way to do it. Thank you. If you have an electronic device, if you'd silence it.
You got a hammer?
Roll call.
Road Commissioner Calhoun,
Present.
Drain Commissioner Christensen,
Present.
Road Commissioner Eckerly is absent, Chairman Joyce,
Here.
Road Commissioner Makowski,
Here.
Road Commissioner Popa.
Here. Approval of agenda.
So move.
I'll second it.
Need a motion on that?
It also says, what, late editions?
Yep.
I'd like to speak about some meetings.
Okay.
What?
You want to add, like, talking about scheduling of the
Yep.
meetings? Okay. Anyone have any problem with that? Okay.
He's done on that motion.
It's more on number 3.
Number, well, it'd be the approval. Let's see.
Approval agenda and late additions or deletions.
He wants to
Yeah,
talk,
I mean,
he wants
wanna
to
talk
talk
about-
about the scheduling of these meetings.
Okay.
So that would be separate.
You want to add it?
So 3B or 3A rather?
We can make it 3A.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
I,
We have to vote on that.
the motion with that addition is fine with me.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the minutes. We don't have any minutes. This is first of our 2 public comment.
Jerry has nothing.
Okay. Communication items. 10/31/2019 letter to the Leland Dam Authority.
No.
I just added a copy of that.
Okay. Do you want this read aloud, or are you all right with it?
Just set it right here.
Just acknowledge it.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions of this letter? Okay. Moving right along to new business. Review proposed budget for dam projects and maintenance handout.
Anybody have one of these newer ones? Should we need that now?
No. I can speak about that.
Okay.
The first page has to do with engineering and construction.
Mm-hmm.
Type that up because at the end of our last meeting, we were going over the projects that are going to be coming up in the near future or years. And there was a lot of question as to what was engineering and what was construction. And are we going to hire the engineers now or whatever? And this is only an information thing to know that as these projects come up over the course of several months or a few years, it's going to require some engineering, and we'll then know some construction costs. So the budget reflects engineering, which is on the left side of that, and it also reflects what the construction numbers would be. It's just a piece of paper here. Those ones on the top that has those arrows, all that was already submitted to the board, where Pat Matchin expected about $20,000 in engineering and about $61,000 worth of projects. The 5 below are the ones that we came up with over the last couple months. So that's an idea of the engineering and construction. That, on that page, is reflected in the next page. So, item number 1, Mr. Chairman, just shows we got about $41,000 worth of engineering to do.
Now, I guess my first question I'm gonna have to you are these actual numbers. Are these current? Because at our last meeting, we had talked about it, that they were not current, and that we're just shooting in the dark.
Right, these are best estimates of what it's gonna cost to repair the gate, what it's gonna cost to overhaul and repair the pistons, hydraulics, like that 5,000 hydraulics. I met with a guy and it says, yeah, I could probably sit down here in 5 days and tell you everything about what it would take to do the hydraulics. So we did our best guess at what we think we should put in a budget to overhaul the pistons, fix the hydraulics, dewatering, we're still looking into that.
Well, I mean, with all due respect, to sit down and just get a guesstimate from the hip, aren't we kind of just spinning our wheels? What if we get actual hard numbers and it comes back and it's significantly more?
If it's lower, then the money sits there.
If it's
higher, we've got about a 15%.
But didn't we speak in the last meeting, though, that we were gonna get actual true numbers?
We can get, go ahead.
How are we gonna get actual true numbers when we don't have a working budget to
You don't-
hire?
It doesn't cost anything to get an estimate. If you're gonna get factual numbers, it's an estimate. It is a quote. And last I knew, you don't have to pay anything to get a quote, especially if you have a list of things that you wanna do. I'm just saying.
I know,
Because
I know that part of what I want to do between now and the next meeting is talk to Rusty. He's going to be here, Rusty Friedel's going to be here from Fisher.
See, I thought we were gonna do that before we had this meeting, that we were gonna talk to Rusty to get some hard numbers, so we knew what we were dealing with.
He will be here on the 18th, which is next week, on Tuesday, to set up. That contract went through, so he's looking at setting up on the 18th. he
And
can come in
I'm
at
playing the
24th.
devil's advocate here.
I am, I appreciate that, and I thought in my mind that he'd already be here, and I'd be talking to him. But the way that contract went, it went to corporate, and then it came back from corporate, it went out to Rusty, then Rusty had to show it past their corporate. So it took an extra week, and I thought we'd already be into it or done with it. And I'd already been talking to him, but that didn't happen. So he's gonna be here on the 18th, I'll shoot an email to him, I wanna talk to him. I wanna talk to him about several things. Number one, how do they treat maintenance through his outfit, Fisher? You know, they probably are on the hook for maintenance for dams, you know, and how do they treat it, and who do they get to do it? Is it in-house, or do they contract out? And what's the procedure? So I want to get that from Rusty. John's got it from the guy that lives on the lake. John's got it from Consumers. All these outfits are on a maintenance program with the seals and the hydraulics. And they because it's a dam, they feel they have to be proactive and maintain them and replace them on a regular basis. So anyway, my plan is to talk to Rusty next week on that. I'm
Well-
also going to talk to him about the painting of the dam. We've got paint on the crest gate that's got a 20-year life, and how does he deal with that in his business? What has he seen? Because I don't want to be doing a dewatering without doing something. I mean, if we're going to dewater, let's paint the thing, you know? Let's not just dewater to see if we can dewater. Let's dewater and do something. So,
And I agree with that. I mean,
So-
but, you know, my biggest thing is that if we're gonna go in front of the board,
yeah.
we're gonna ask for money, and we're gonna have line items, of things that we wanna do to this dam, and we damn well better have our numbers.
As good as we can get. them.
Absolutely.
Right. And
We're looking out at 10 years
I-
of work.
I appreciate that, and I feel that we can get really close, we are darn close, but not really close. So we're working our way toward, being really close. And
Yeah,
then
and
with what
like I
I'm doing,
said-
will get part of what we're doing really close. And if we can identify other ones, and we get marching orders of who to talk to, I think we'll be farther ahead as we make it to our next meeting. I'm looking at the next meeting, maybe in January. Everything else we're doing here is not a burning issue. We just need to be good with it.
Right.
Just like what you're saying, we need to be, we can't go to the board with something that's not close. We need to be really close.
And it's no disregard to anyone, but I want to be as close, I don't want to waste our time, and I don't want to waste the commissioner's time as well.
Correct.
So if we can be as spot on as possible, that's what I'd like to see.
And so I think part of what John's angling toward today is just exactly what you just said, is to kind of take them one at a time, and let's see if we feel that we're really close, or just sort of close, and how can we get really close on each item. Let's kind of go through them, I think, and just, as we're going through them, be thinking about whatever might be something we're missing. So that we aren't gonna rush through this thing, we're just gonna take our time and make sure that we get it darn good.
That clean gate and inspect, we will, Steve will get a little bit tighter number on that. And if we gotta paint it and stuff, I threw some money in that. The dewatering, we had an estimate of 3 days for that. And I bumped it up to 5 days. So we're pretty good on that one. That was already a quote from before. To overhaul these pistons and hydraulics, I met for about 3 hours with this Don, and we went over prints and stuff. And he told me easily that if you brought an engineer in here, he could probably sit down in less than 5 days, tell us what to do to the pistons. I think we already know what we want to do to some of them. And also to tune up all those hydraulics, if we want to do it, would take about a week. So those bottom 3 numbers are pretty tight, and Steve's gonna see if that 2,000 and 4,000 is it. So that kind of breaks it down between engineering and projects.
John, can you get an engineer to give you a hard number on that, or are we
You
just
can't go out
asking
for bids
for
now,
his?
because you have to pay them. You'd have to-
Yeah, that's what I.
Yeah, we're
That's
not,
my point.
otherwise it would delay all this stuff by months. To go out for bids, to get an engineer to do this, we need the board's approval to proceed with everything, and then we will start going out and
Do we normally pay for RFQs?
If you're gonna
That-
do engineering, you could get an
Well,
RFQ to say.
I mean, if you know what you want to do, why do you have to have an engineer? If you're going to a company to get a price to have something done, just like we did with Pat Machin, we went to him and said, this is what we want to do, what's it going to cost us? And he came back with a price before we even proceeded. So we didn't pay him
This
to
was
come
on
up
the
with a...
emergency?
Correct.
Right.
And typically, that's how you do it.
Typically that is. In that case, we knew that we had an OSHA thing to bring up to compliance, and so we sent a proposal out, and it went out with that big proposal. We want someone to come in and do that. In this
Well-
case, we don't know what we're gonna do to replace these pistons or replace the hydraulics. We gotta have someone to get us an RFQ on those kind of things. You gotta, what are we gonna do with all these pistons? What are we gonna do with these hydraulics? I don't know.
I think that it would be worth our time to find out if there's money that actually has to change hands in order to get an estimate.
So which one is that for?
We're talking about the bottom 3, under maintenance.
So
Bottom 3, we already have estimates on that.
Those are good estimates?
Yeah, we worked a couple hours on that we figured.
Hold on a minute. Who worked on that? Did the company that's going to actually do the work give you the number, or is it just something that you guesstimated? And I'm not trying to beat the
You
dead
gotta come up
horse.
with an estimate someplace.
Yeah, but you gotta...
What is it gonna estimate?
But I mean, what makes you an expert on giving that number for that particular...
I happened to see his quotes on the pistons, I happened to see his quotes he got on the parts. This guy that works on these things in,
That was the guy from the lake?
yeah, he works on them in refineries and stuff. And he says, yeah, if you can get that done and you can get this done, I can come up with recommendations to do all this and that. And he says, probably in 4 or 5 days, I could have you guys a real good RFQ to send out. And he would come back with something.
Maybe, maybe as a suggestion, maybe you could have a conversation with Pat Mashin and tell him that you're looking at these numbers, and we got them from the guy on the lake. Is there another way to get a number?
I think Jerry's talked to a few vendors and stuff, and whatever.
What's that?
Is that-
We're talking about overhaul or replace pistons and overhaul or replace hydraulics. I think Jerry has,
Hydraulics is 4,200 with the price I got, and 7,000 for a new cylinder.
a brand new cylinder is 7,000.
If you were going to, John had talked about replacing that, if we want to replace it, to redo it. That's a 12, 14-day build and ship. The cylinder, that's $7,000. To replace the hydraulic system through the company that built the hydraulic system, they gave me a price of, and this is just for the hydraulic, you know,
The
control
lines.
system is $4,200, which
Yeah.
I've given.
That
So that's
whole,
from the people that built the equipment.
that's the whole control system.
So how's that
Let's go
reflect,
from that.
how's it reflect with this that we have in
I
front of
don't
us?
know.
The control, that's the whole control system that sits on top of the reservoir?
That's correct.
That entire thing, all
That's correct.
the valves
Correct.
and all the piping?
Yes, sir.
Because in here it says
That's-
overall,
That's 4,200,
At the time, when I talked to them, was past fall.
and that's the piece.
That's to take out what's there, set a new one in.
That's
Adjustments.
4,200 for the piece, or would they actually do the labor to install it too?
You had asked me for what it costs to replace that. That's the number to replace it. You have a hydraulic man come in and make adjustments. Once we go online with it, you have to make some adjustments, I'm sure. That, I don't know. You might be looking at
Because in
$5,000
here
for
it-
somebody to
So,
come
yeah,
in.
so that would get us to the
Yeah,
ballpark, and then
exactly.
and maybe another 1,000 to get it completely tuned in and everything?
True.
am I looking at the right thing here, or the right line here? Because here it says overhaul and replace pistons, $10,000.
Well, that's with labor. It's, if you replace one of those cylinders, and of course the ram inside, you're looking at $7,000 for one of those. But that does not include the labor to come in and take it out and haul it down, or to anyone, to rebuild it. You know, there's a 10 to 14-day turnover time if, or to replace that one they built to spec, but that's what the cost would be. $7,000 for that. If you could pull it out, put one in, $7,000, but that doesn't include labor to do it. Okay, so that's where John came up with around $10,000. If you were going to add labor and some extras to it, that you'd be looking around $10,000. He's right about that, yeah. That's what we worked, John and I worked off of first, and then he was exploring different avenues of, you know, to try to better maybe what we have. So, and that's cool. But that $10,000 number, I think would cover, you know, if you want to replace one of those cylinders. And then the 42 to, and maybe it'd be 52, you know, in that neighborhood. You don't know what labor costs are going to be, but that's where John worked off of that to come to where we're at now. So we're on the right page. It's, you know, the right
So-
direction, but.
So those two numbers can get massaged and be a little more accurate. Looks like, if we're gonna completely replace two pistons, we'd be at 14,000 plus the takeout and put back.
When we looked at it,
7,000 for one, 14 for two.
Correct,
If we were just gonna replace them entirely,
correct.
and we don't know if we're gonna do that, we don't know if we wanna do that, or if we're gonna
That's what John worked off of.
overhaul them.
Sure.
So,
we wanted to have two numbers. We want to have complete replace. The overhaul is much, much less. The parts are still available.
Correct.
You're looking at labor to come down, take one down in the shop, and you'd have it back in 2 weeks. And it would only be a few $1,000. Whatever there was, those seals and parts were only
Correct,
$2
what you
grand,
said.
and another $2 grand for labor, and so I
The
put it
gentleman you're
in.
talking to, John, is
Yeah,
can see all that stuff and say, well, we really need to focus on certain things, like you
Right.
said, and
and that's why I put 10 grand in there, if
Right.
you wanna bump it up. But, for 10 grand, you could take those cylinders out and overhaul them and put them back in by the manufacturer.
So let's,
Can I say something?
John, maybe if I could just interject real quick. John, if you could take those numbers, it looks to me like we ought to have two categories. One is an overhaul category and one is a replace. Because the difference in cost will be significantly more for one versus the other.
I put it for overhaul, and if you wanna put replace, then you'd have to add another 5 to that pile.
So the word replace shouldn't be in the,
Overhaul or replace.
it should be just overhaul then, right?
Correct. You're saying where I wrote overhaul, replace, that?
Yeah, you
Second.
wrote overhaul or replace on this sheet right here.
If we wanna keep it as replace, then it should be 15,000.
So I don't have a problem with using both words, but we should have one set of numbers for overhaul and another set for replace.
If you're gonna replace them, you're gonna need another 5.
So why don't marching orders for next go, if you can take those two, the pistons and the hydraulics, and do an overhaul line and a replace line, so we can see the difference on that. Does that sound good?
You could, where would you put it on here?
Well, I mean, we might need another sheet or something, I don't know. We might need one sheet is this and another sheet
You
is
could
that.
put it under clarification. If you overhaul this, it's gonna be this, and if you're gonna replace them, it's gonna be this. And so the board needs something to go with on a special assessment. And would you put 15 and not spend it, or would you put 10 and save some money?
Well,
You can't go to a special assessment. with
Well, I
2.
know, I realize that, for this board, for us to understand which is which,
Okay,
we need to have two sets of numbers to look at. If you could do that, that'd be great. And I'll be cleaning up the two above it, cleaning the gate and inspect and repair gates, seals and paint. I'll be talking to Rusty and getting his protocol and how they go about doing it and how can we get numbers for that for our dam.
okay.
Jim?
Yep, I disagree. Most of the time, the labor is a lot more than what the parts are. Most, all the time. I don't think $3,000 is enough.
3,000.
So that's why I think we gotta get some high numbers. We can't.
3,000 for what?
Well, you're saying $10,000.
If you're saying
if the piston's
$10,000, you're saying $7,000 to rebuild it. So apparently you're figuring $3,000 labor, and that isn't a good number.
No, I went,
I don't know, Greg, how many times have you taken something in the labor can be 10 cents or I mean, the part can be 10 cents, and I'm really exaggerating, but it can be 10 cents and your labor is something like 10 grand.
Yeah, points
So
well
your
taken.
labor is way off as far as I'm concerned.
That's why I'm saying that.
Point well taken.
I think we're putting the cart before the horse, that you have to find out. I can't imagine that an RFQ is gonna cost money. I can't. I mean, it just, especially if we're saying, we'd like you to bid this, 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 and this. How much is it? They have all the information, so what is it that they have to engineer? They don't have to engineer anything.
we called a vendor, and he said he could overhaul a piston for $450.
Okay, that's one thing.
Right.
That's one thing.
And then we looked at what parts it would take to do it, and then we added the labor to take it in and out, and that's where I came up with 5 grand a piston. I can cross out.
But there again, I guess what I'm saying, I think Jim's saying the same thing. We're guesstimating. We're not getting hard numbers.
Well, I think the point is John, if you could list out the procedure you used to get to the number, you know, who you called and what they said, and then we can have
Well,
a
that's what we're
name.
talking about now. We spent 3 hours, we talked to some vendors. We talked about what it would take to overhaul them. All the parts are available. We know what the parts cost. We know what it would take to overhaul one. And I should cross out the word replace and then put a comment under there. If you want to replace them, they're $7,000 a piece, plus what Jim mentioned, plus there's labor on top of it to come in and take it out and put it back in.
Yeah, I think if we can see that, if we see that as a board, that would help, I think, everybody.
I can put it in 3.
You could list out,
Well, it's-
the procedure of getting the number and who you called, and so we're feeling good about, okay, you called so-and-so and they said this, you called so-and-so and they said that, and then added it up, and that's how that number was derived. And I think that would help everybody to see how the number got derived and have confidence in the number.
As long as the person who gives you the number is standing behind that number when it's go time.
Well,
You know what I mean? I
you know,
mean-
an estimate's an estimate, and if you're going for an estimate on a verbal discussion and they're familiar with what they're doing, that gets you to the ballpark. And
But
I
I-
think if we can go to the county commissioners and be in the ballpark,
But I think
and
that-
they know that that's what we're doing.
And if they can give you a verbal, they should be able to give you a written. And I think a written weighs a lot more than a verbal, especially when you're going to the commissioners.
I think the next step, what we need to do, I think, is get to a ballpark so the commissioners can decide whether the special assessment district makes sense or not. You know, what kind of numbers are we talking about? And if we use verbals and get to the door, that'll give us and the commissioners enough information to make a few decisions. Once we get to the next step, who's doing what when, then we go to piece to piece to piece and get written, you know, go out to bids.
Well, which,
You know, that type of
and I
thing.
understand that, I mean,
Yeah.
that makes sense. But what happens in that gap between the verbal and the written if there's a big fluctuation or change? Then here we are back to.
It comes out, and we were going in thinking it was this, and as it turns out, that changed, now it's this, and that happens all the time. That's something that's understandable, and, you know, it either is a go or a no-go. When we're working with the county commissioners, we're presenting things, and we're making a recommendation, and we see something that needs to be done. And if they're looking at it saying, we don't have that this year, or it's not in the cards this year, or for whatever reason, they say it's not gonna happen at this point, they give us marching orders to go do whatever we have to do and bring it back. So it's a kind of a give and take. I think our job is to get a ballpark that's close. I don't think we need to start doing written bids for things. I think that'll slow us down and get us, you know, we're gonna get into field season and then we're gonna be into the fall of the year. I see if we can get ballpark, maybe we can be presenting something in February maybe, and try to make some decisions and move the ball forward. I don't wanna get bogged down. Does that make sense?
There is about 60 grand for contingencies, and that's mainly gonna be a cushion at our projects above. There is no contingencies in mailing and all that and stuff. And so there is about 60 grand in case something goes over. A lot of these will be under, but there was a lot of work in going over those 3 things with Jerry and these other people and getting prints out. But I could change some of that wording there.
So we're gonna tune up maintenance items. I have the first 2, John has the second 2. And John's gonna list out how he got those numbers. Top was complete. That sounds like where we're heading, to get those numbers more solid, we can go down and talk about number 4, 5, or are we still on number 3?
The dewatering, we have that from something that was done 20 years ago.
That dewatering's not even close.
The dewatering, he figured he could have it done in 3 days.
Well, Rusty was the one who designed it, and I'll add that to my list, to talk to Rusty about the dewatering.
And we put $5,000 for more engineering, because if we were gonna have someone to come in and dewater it, then is it gonna take that guy a couple days to draw up a bid document so that we can go out for bids of who's gonna fabricate it and do all that stuff? And for 3 days at a couple $1,000 a day, or $1,000 an hour, I came up with that, and I just made it 5 days and came up with $40,000 at $1,000 an hour. Gave it a 2-day cushion on there.
Yeah, that.
And I got that out of the first construction job package that we had.
That was the temporary bulkhead material and insulation guide, Leland Dam, from '08.
Yeah, there's a procedure on it there.
And Rusty from Drace did the design, and then the design was approved by Spicer Group, who's an engineering firm. And we wanted this so that we could go ahead and de-water if we had a problem with the dam. And de-watering meaning just set the posts in ahead of it, put the boards against the post, and that would short-stop the water. We let the water go down the manual side, and that leaves the crest gate free of water to be worked on. So I'll hit Rusty up with that and have him look at it and get us a number as to what it would cost to do it, and also whether or not it needs to be redesigned, or whether someone like Pat Machin needs to do the drawings on it. The drawings that are in here are from Rusty, and they're accurate. They're sketch format, if you will. They're not engineered drawings from an engineering firm.
Talking to Rusty, that's gonna be his opinion, still not getting estimates.
No, he can do estimates.
Oh, he can?
Oh, yeah. He's been doing this stuff for 26 years. He's with Fisher. He can put a number on it. And it.
So
and it can
is
be-
that what you're gonna ask
Yeah.
Rusty for, is
A number on the
A number.
dewatering, and then
That.
whether or not that needs to be redrawn or re-engineered.
Mhm.
You know, I'm gonna ask him that too.
Okay, that way.
And get a cost on that too, so we should have a really good number for that one from Rusty. So that's the third, so I've got 3 things. I've got some marching orders.
Continuing on then, taking those numbers from this engineering and construction, on that bottom of that page, I estimated 2 months ago how much we would spend and increase the construction part considerably, especially on the hydraulics part.
So, where are we?
Okay, so we can go to our main repair and maintenance expenditures. If we were gonna go to the board with what we think for 10 years it's gonna cost, they like to see the stuff divided in engineering, actual work done, and the maintenance, what's in maintenance, because the laws say you can put maintenance in on a special assessment. So the engineering, there's about $41,000 in engineering, and that's been fairly conservative. The construction part, where we gotta fabricate these braces and dewater and the grease system, those numbers came from that page. The top 2 came from Pat Machin, and that 40,000 is what we came up with after reading Rusty's thing about a week's work. The grease system may go away, but that was put in at 5, and that came from Pat Machin.
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 I think you should.
I don't know if I'll ever get it right. The maintenance, we think we're gonna have to clean and inspect that gate someday, not sure when. We may have to replace the seals and paint it. That's not wild, the paint's gonna be 20 years old. But we can get a figure on that later on down. It might be in 2 or 3 years, but.
I'm hoping I can get that from Rusty.
Uh-huh. And overhaul or replace the pistons, I'll cross out the word replace. But if you do have to replace them, it'll be $7,000 each. That overhaul and replace the hydraulics, when we got together that day, there's different things on that hydraulic stuff that's gotta be changed around. One is, we gotta take that top off of that pump and put 2 different units on top. Right now, there's only 1 unit and you can't work on it. And there's some time in on that, and that's why that price is $30,000. The next item is that $120,000. We spend anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000 a year now just doing routine things. And Jerry does most of that. There's utilities in there and some other stuff. And $12,000 a year is a real conservative number. Sometimes it'll be less. I doubt if it'll ever go more.
When we end up showing that, we'll end up having to, in essence, take the last, say, 5 years and line item it out so that they can see what it is exactly that means. And that's something that comes right from the budget for the dam each year. As Jerry does the work on it, it just gets put in there and we can pull that line item out and the board can see it.
Well, on the next page.
They've already seen it.
On the next page, under item 3, that last item, I went back and it's anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000 a year.
10 years more.
So I did go back and look at them, but if you want a printout, I can get you a printout.
Yeah, the
But I looked at it and that's what they're looking at.
county board is gonna wanna see it, but we could see it too. That'd be good.
Then 4 and 5, these came from the last time we did a dam. And there's legal stuff to go through, mailings, printing, office supplies, software. Software can probably go away, but I put it in there anyway in case we need to upgrade something. Right now, I think they're running okay. I talked to her yesterday and she said her software is fine. That next one where it says special assessment charges. The first time we did the dam, we paid each township $3 a parcel. The last time we did the dam, we paid them $5. I think we talked about this one. We increased it another $2 because it's been just about 20 years. So if we go to the board and say the dam authority thinks we ought to reimburse them for $7 a parcel, that would be $11,000.
We may not have to do that if there isn't a special
I
assessment.
hear you. This is in the budget. Equalization had time in it, and there was miscellaneous fees. I gave some of that to you in that one packet I handed out a couple meetings ago. I showed the last package in there. There was some money for utilities if you're doing major projects. That's a conservative estimate. That electronic cabinets and stuff, we got into them here once a couple of years ago, and we're lucky we got some of that stuff for free. But the original cabinets and stuff is obsolete and gone in their history, and they only lasted about, what, dozen years? And they're all smoked and whatever. We've got more state-of-the-art. But if you're looking over the next 10 years, if we have to upgrade anything in that cabinet, the board should know about it.
Yeah, it's pretty typical for computers. They have a real definite lifespan.
So the last item was dam inspections. I put $18,000 a year. You gotta do them every 3 years. And I don't know, what did this last one's cost us, Steve?
it's gonna be 1,800 or 1,900, and then but the underwater inspection will be on top of that.
Mhm.
And that came in, we did get the underwater inspection in, and we can make copies of this. We'll eventually get it to everybody via email and or hard copy. But it came through in good shape.
Did everybody see that? That report?
It's been done already?
The underwater.
Underwater has.
What did that cost?
I don't have a bill for it. The
Oh.
bill goes through, well, yeah, it's gonna go through Spicer.
Did you have an estimate on it, or just?
Yeah.
We had to do the.
Yeah, no, they had.
We're gonna put our own number in there.
I was just gonna read that.
So for 10 years of inspections, I put $1,800 a year in there.
For the whole 10 years.
Yeah. That's
That
why.
seems pretty light.
Well, we only do that
1,800
one
or
every
18,000?
Well, the
1,800.
triangle was 18.
We only do that one every 3 years.
Still seems pretty light. Maybe I'm wrong, but it'd be a first.
Well, we can take a close look at that. Yeah, the triannual's been running around 2,000.
If you do the triannual and do 3 times, and next year you got $6,000. So I added another 12,000 to it in case we gotta do some other inspections.
Yeah.
That's a concern.
Bob may be right. It's hard to tell what's gonna happen.
We're just
We've
throwing-
gotta get the dive team back out, or, it could be a,
We're
could
just
be a
throwing
number
numbers
we
out
might
there. I
wanna,
don't think that's really good.
yeah, it could be a number we might wanna have a little bit higher than that.
But we're not gonna know what it's gonna cost in 5 years anyway.
No. We have to go to a special assessment. And
Well,
what do you
that's-
think?
yeah,
It's been running this, it's been running that.
Yeah,
Put a little cushion in there.
The idea of it was to get a 10-year
Window.
plan,
Yeah.
to try to get a number for a 10-year plan. And that's kind of what we've been working on here.
But you
And
could also,
When we get all the
I
way,
mean,
when we get all the way through, then we can switch over. Greg had a good point, that we probably should touch on. John, are we almost all through?
Well, then you can just see the subtotal is about 400,000 with a 15% contingency, which is permitted by law. That added another 60 grand. So you're talking about $460,000 over the next 10 years. With some cushion and some numbers.
So, anyway, Greg's comment was, if the special assessment district is necessary, is that,
Or not necessary.
right? Yeah, that's the question. While we're thinking about that and get into that conversation, the recommendations from the underwater study, the following are work recommendations for the Leland Dam as a result of the underwater inspection, and there's only one item that says, none at this time. So we came up clean on the underwater inspection. And that'll be here, if you guys want to take a peek before you head out.
Now, to get at Greg's question, I spent a couple hours last night and said, well, what if we didn't do a special assessment? What would go away?
Not much.
If you want to take a peek at that, you can.
I'll bring it to you.
Do you have another one, John?
I do. She needs a copy.
Exactly. See if that's,
We're good. Thank you.
is it the same? Okay, they've got it.
Because there has been talk of, let's not do a special assessment. So then I went over all those numbers that we just went through. I looked at some of this dewatering and safety brace stuff and a grease system, and I gave a pretty good cushion there, but we ran without an assessment, we don't need a cushion, and we just did it with what we think it would be. I took 10% off of that, and it was the same under that maintenance. Like I told you, if we had to put that, inspect that gate and do all that kind of stuff, Rusty said we could do it in 3 days, I put 5. So I took 10% off of that too. And so there was like $17,000 in cushion, where if we just did it every year without an assessment, what kind of money are you looking at spending? And $120,000 in yearly maintenance won't change. But what does change is item 4 and 5, if you look at that, all the administrative yahoo and running around and software and labeling and paying all these townships. There's $11,000 just going to the townships. There's a considerable pile of money there saved. All that goes away. Utilities still might stay, the electronic cabinets. If you do that, you end up with only $349,000 of bills. And if you take away the contingency, you're only left with $289,000. So we could tell the board that we think we got a pretty good budget if you guys want a special assessment. But if you guys are thinking of doing this dam by yourself over the next 10 years, you're only talking about $25,000 to $30,000 a year in expenses.
One thing that could happen, and we haven't talked about, you know, how we feel about, as an authority about special assessment or not, okay? But let's just say if we are thinking maybe we're gonna head toward a recommendation of not, how would that look to the County Board of Commissioners? And if we're not gonna do a special assessment district and we don't have the special assessment go through and garner X amount of dollars for the next 10 years, and then the people in the special assessment district have to pay over a certain length of time, and then that money is garnered and sitting here, and it gets paid out on a yearly basis for 10 years. If we don't do that, how would we do it? Well, number one, we've got really good numbers on what we have to spend every year for maintenance. And we take that average number, let's say it's 12,000. We know we're gonna have that. So we can treat this like a budget and say, okay, we know we're gonna have 12,000, and we know we need the safety brace in place and engineered. So that's gonna add 55,000. So 12 and 55, we've got that total, that's year one. It's significantly less than $100,000, and that's the first year. And we as an authority could be looking at each of these items that we need to do and deciding when are we going to have to do this in our minds. So maybe it's year 2, we do one of the pistons. Maybe in year 3, we do the hydraulic overhaul. Maybe year 4, we do the other piston. See what I'm saying? We decide and set that up so the county board can see where we're going, and they know what's coming with regard to what we see happening with the dam. And it's going to be this amount or less each year.
And as a dam authority, as we have our meetings, whatever Jerry brings up or whatever inspections bring, this is then hey, we better look at these pistons. Let's go out for some quotes and bids and stuff, and looking at hard numbers every time instead of just what do we think it's going to cost over the next 10 years. I think that's a more controlled method of going about it. I think we would have a lot better bids then to go to the board with. The board would just have to know that in their yearly budget, they're going to have to either set aside or use the general funds.
They have a way of earmarking I know, when we went into this year, we had $5,000 earmarked for the roof repair, which isn't on here, by
That's
the way.
We didn't do that.
The roof repair, so 5,000 was earmarked here, and we actually went out to bids on it, I believe. I don't know if we
We
got
did.
anything back.
Nothing, we got the specs, we sent the specs out, and I haven't heard.
I don't think we got anything back on
Oh,
it.
you just had an
Haven't seen what
estimate?
made up the spec.
I see,
But anyway, we ran into the flood wall.
yeah.
And what the board did is they took that earmark money and they moved it over here to the flood wall. So they knew something was coming and they were ready for that part of it. So if we are a year ahead, or maybe even 2 years ahead on what we're thinking we're going to do, then the county board of commissioners could know that, and they could be earmarking that money, and we could be moving through on the budget process like everybody else in the building does, and showing them what we want to do this year. And provided things don't break, we could follow that pattern. Now, that might be something that the county board of commissioners would consider. I'm just thinking of something that we could make a recommendation for if we decide to do that. The special assessment district is another avenue too, and I know county board members, some of them are real excited about the idea of special assessment district picking up some of the tab on what has to happen with the dam. So there's a lot of opinions, and I think if we are careful with our consideration and work closely with numbers that we continue to improve, and have these discussions, and not rush it, as Bob was saying, I really appreciate that. I definitely don't want to sit in front of the county board of commissioners with something that's half-baked. I want us to really consider what we're doing and have a real strong idea and consideration going in. But anyway, John and I were kind of brainstorming that, and in my mind, I was trying to think of how the county commissioners might look favorably on that concept, and that might be one that they would say, gosh, that doesn't sound too bad. So anyway, I don't know what John and I have talked a little bit. Craig made his feelings known, and I don't know if we're there in the agenda yet, but.
Well, they are waiting to see what do we think we're looking at for 10 years of repairs and maintenance. And if we meet in January and tune up some of these numbers, we're saying, well, we're thinking in a ballpark of this. If you want to go pull the switch and go special assessment, you'd have to do this. If you think you want to do it by just going out for bids every time and having projects run through the dam authority, then a lot of this stuff goes away and you'll get real good hard numbers, and we present it to the board. Every year they're gonna want what we think a budget item is. They put the budget together
June.
and vote on it by August and say, you might need $50,000 next year, or you might need 20,000. These first couple of years are gonna be steep. We could get the dam inspection done and that thing put up and then say, hey, we found out this, that it does need painting and the rubber is rotten, and do it next year. Or we could get part of it out of the way. So there's two ways of looking at this, but we should give them something, I think, by the February meeting. Sharpen a few of these numbers up like you guys wanted.
You're gonna see Rusty Tuesday? This
He's
coming
gonna be
Tuesday?
here the 18th, which is either Tuesday or Wednesday, I think. Wednesday, so that, plan A is, Rusty's here on Wednesday. I'm gonna
So
be
you're
in
gonna
con-
have a lot of hard
I'm
numbers.
gonna be in contact with him before then.
Yeah, but you'll have hard numbers.
For a lot of this stuff,
For a
yeah.
lot of this
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. And then John's gonna line out all the stuff he's got on those hydraulic numbers, who he talked to and what that person said, so that should be firmed up pretty well too. And then this other stuff from 4 on down was pulled from the last time that we did this. So those numbers, did you sweeten them at all, or were that pretty much what it was?
No, you sweeten them.
I sweetened that, like that one, he thought he could inspect the dam in 3 days, I made it 5.
No,
This,
he was
this
talking
number
about
5 is it?
five.
Number 5.
No,
The
it's-
mailing,
Mailing,
publishing,
printing, office
office.
supply?
No, if you look, I took a lot of that off of, the one from a couple of years ago. or-
But you did sweeten the special assessment charge
I
from 5 to
did,
7.
yeah, we have to vote on that.
Oh, okay.
Later
yeah.
on.
Well, did you talk to Lori about that number?
Yeah. She said it has to come from here, and then it has to go to the board.
So much,
Lori can't tell her how much she's gonna pay until it goes through here.
so she didn't give any,
She ain't gonna say.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Which gets us into this. You kinda, anybody got any more questions about the budget, how he came up with that and present stuff or whatever?
I just,
I-
like I say, the numbers don't add up.
So we need.
It's, I guess it's gonna be like this, and we take that to them, especially with what they've had happen to the courthouse and the jail. I think they're going to
I agree.
send it back to us.
I
So
think
as
we're
we-
shooting in the dark.
So we need
And
to
we
firm
can't.
these numbers up like we said.
And I think that we need to not just go back and make a new, print out something in Word, or, I think that we need to actually have numbers. Reach out to these people and say, hey, listen, even if it's a forecast, they do it all the time.
Aren't we gonna have pretty much that done after
Well, that's what
Steve talks to
Yeah, but Rusty's
Rusty?
just, you're talking, the only thing that I've heard that he's talking to Rusty about is the dewatering.
I've got the paint, I've got, maintenance and engineering for the hydraulics, I've got, inspection and maintenance for painting, I've got, seal maintenance and protocol for the hydraulics. Who does he go to? How does that work? What's the cost? How do we get numbers? And I'm gonna do it for the seals, the dam seals also.
I
You know,
would say
how
that,
does he, who does he use, and how does he get to a number? How can we get to a good number on that?
I would say that whatever he comes back with, that he can help us off this list. And then we meet to see what's left.
Look at it, and then
Because-
John's gotta do more on that hydraulics.
Because you don't want to leave items, I mean, we need hard items, and whatever Rusty can do for us, that's great. And whatever he can't, then we need to find an alternative that we can get a solid number.
Keep looking for good numbers, not go until everybody
Because you
feels.
made a good point with the commissioners, especially with what they've been through with the roof.
Not go to the commissioners until we have numbers that we feel comfortable with.
Correct.
Where are,
I'm wondering if we can get back together though sooner than January. If you're going to have this information from
Well, that's
us in
item
the next
3 on the
7
agenda.
days.
well, I'm not too sure how quickly he can get those
Oh, okay.
things to me. I'm gonna get an email to him, and I'm gonna talk to him on Wednesday, and, you know, we're going in, he's busy, we're going into the holiday season.
Oh, yeah.
I'm thinking that if we can get back together in January, we have a decent chance of having better numbers, and we can look at them again. And if we don't feel like this one's good yet, then we go back and we keep going until we feel good about our numbers.
I just think it's extremely important.
I agree, I certainly don't want to rush anything. So, where's my agenda?
The next item is, I drew this up. Does everybody get an idea, because we talked about a lot of this, of the things that we gotta do on the left-hand side of the page, and that someone has to meet and do on the right-hand side of the page. You want another one?
What page you on? Oh, that one, okay, yeah. We don't have a copy of that.
Should have been in your packet.
Oh, it is. Keep digging.
You got one?
She's got one, yeah.
Can you set one up so I can look at it too? Go ahead.
Sure. Well, one, we gotta finalize our budget, and I said, when are we gonna do that? And I wrote in December, but We just gotta finalize our budget. We then have to make 3 separate motions for the assessment ratio, determine the classifications, and determine the assessor reimbursement. And that has to be done on a motion, each one. And I got them from the last time we did it 20 years ago. So that is something we gotta come up with and do. And then with that, the budget and how we're gonna divide it up, then that has to go to the county board. And that's, you gotta draw up the paperwork to put in front of them, how to go about doing it, the printouts, and our motions and everything.
Don't we need to figure out if we're gonna do a special assessment before? I mean, it'd be kinda good to know if, which direction we're gonna move before we do everything, because almost everything here
Right, number 2,
coincides
yeah,
with
number
the
2
special
is,
assessment.
number 2 is the ratio if there is a special assessment, and good point, we haven't decided, I don't know, we could have a general discussion. I don't necessarily think we need to vote on any of those things today.
No, none of this is gonna get voted on
I
today.
don't think we're there.
You're talking
But I don't know, we
about,
could just go up and down the line and talk about what we think about special assessment and,
But why don't we
or not.
start right down there with Mr. Mikowski?
I don't think we should have one. I sat in on a board meeting the other day, and our county board is entertaining buying a boat or setting up a budget to buy a boat for the sheriff's office for over $400,000. And I think should be the responsibility of the county to take care of the dam, the maintenance and the upkeep for less money probably in the next 10 years than that boat's gonna cost. And when we get the boat, we have to man it, we have to fuel it. It's gonna be a big cost for the county. I personally don't think that's one thing that, I was amazed that the board, somebody on board, and I don't know who it was, said, we need to get that in the budget for going forward, so we have money in the budget to replace these vessels. So, in my opinion, I think the county board would be doing the voters not a disservice, but to take care of the dam would be a service to the taxpayers. Much quicker and better way to spend county money than on the boat. Spend it on the dam, keep it up, maintain it, and not go to the riparians for the money every time there's something that goes wrong. There should be something in the county budget ongoing to take care of this, because something's gonna break. Something else is gonna happen, and if the county's not prepared, I don't think it's right to go to the riparians every time there's a bill comes in that nobody wants to pay, when the people along the lake are already paying taxes, property taxes on a high valuation. And I have a property on the lake, I don't live on the lake. I enjoy the lake, but my neighbor across the street has a view of the lake, has a boat. He goes down and puts it in at the public access, and he enjoys the lake as much as anybody. But he's not going to be in the special assessment. And it's not, doesn't look to me like it's gonna be a lot of, it would be a lot of money, but that's not my point. My point is, I think this is something the county needs to address and should have it in their budget to take care of the dam. And if it's more than one dam, they need to think about that too. Because there is more than one dam. That's just my opinion.
Steve?
It's a great question. And I lived through the special assessment with the previous dam repair. And at that point, it was the very first thing I saw on my desk as my very first day as drain commissioner, a piece of paper from the DENR that said, Mr. Christensen, you need to fix your dam. There was an inspection that saw the undermining, the piping underneath the dam, and the sediments that were being washed out. And it turned into a really large project right away that was very complicated. I don't think there was any question at that point whether or not there would be the special assessment and the county going 50-50. I mean, it just kind of was an automatic with the board that was there and the history. 21 years previously, they had done a big dam repair that didn't hold up very well, and some dredging to the tune of $750,000 or something. It was quite a big number, and that was 50-50 split, no question. So this go was going to be more than that, and there was no question. So very big numbers, there was no question. So now we're looking at some bills, you know, and it's starting to say 90,000 or 125,000. You know, and in this day and age, and with what this county has for resources and the kinds of things they've been able to do, because we are fortunate to have that kind of money. We've been able to do a roof, we've been able to do a heat system, we've been able to do quite a few things that are needed, and you know, the commissioners thought ahead to put money in a sock, and that's the reason we're sitting in a building like this. So a lot of things have gone right, and the commissioners have done really good things with the monies. I think structuring this in a way where we're down to 100,000 or less on a given year, and quite a bit less on the in-between years, could be something that makes a lot of sense. When we get to something that, in my mind, is going to be a $500,000 thing, there should be some number set. Maybe we set it. Maybe the County Board of Commissioners sets it. When the dam issues hit $500,000 for an item, we go special assessment district. And maybe that's not the number. But without that number, every time we get a bill that's more than 10,000 or more than 20,000, there's going to be a call to go to the riparians. And when you look at what the riparians, you know, we're going to spend, gosh, you know, we're going to spend 25,000 just to turn the crank. 35,000 just to turn the crank to get the thing in motion. But above and beyond that, do the assessors at the township level, do they have this time to do this? Granted, they're going to get paid, but do they have time to do that? Lori Spencer, does she have time? Do all the people that John Gallagher, you know, me, you know, do these people have all the time in the world to be just, oh gosh, we'll have them do this? So there is that time issue. So if we save money and we save time and we have a definite number that we know we have to do special assessment district at, in my mind that would make sense. If we can keep what we're doing around 100,000 or less on a given year, I don't see that as exorbitant. You know, we've got X amount of dollars in our overall budget for the county, and that seems to fit for me. And I think we as a county could do that. That's my opinion.
John?
I don't know if my voice is going to make it.
Well, if not, you can stop and I'll carry on.
I also was on the board 20 years ago when we built this present dam. It was a big project, but it was $1 million project. and the county was concerned and overwhelmed, and they were given orders by the government to do something about it. And it also complied with a 200-year flood. So it was a big project, and it startled everybody, and they pulled the switch and went special assessment. Now that special assessment, to go through all those hearings and do what we did, we met about every week or every 2 weeks. And it wasn't a lot of fun. There was about 150 or 50, one of those two numbers. I think there was 150 people came in as concerned. It took us 4 hours to listen to all their concerns and stuff. After I went through those numbers, and I spent 2 hours on it last night and saw what it was to go through this thing and not do a special assessment, there's $35,000 spent in just administrative stuff, just keeping people employed. If you look at our repairs that we gotta do versus some things we gotta build, what we gotta build is very little compared to what repairs. And then sitting on the Lake Association, of course my phone rings off the hook. They're saying, why are we doing this? Because the county owns that dam. It's their job to keep the maintenance up. Why are we gonna pay half of their next 10 years in maintenance? And then he crabbed a little bit, why wasn't something done right the first time? Well, that's only those upper braces and that dewatering thing. That was the only part that really we could have caught when we built the dam. So the rest of this is maintenance. I think once we come and meet next time, I think we do need to explain that though to the county commissioners. We gotta say, we think this is a good number of, or in a ballpark of what it would take to operate this dam over the next 10 years. However, you guys as commissioners should know that if you want to do this yourself, this is about what it's going to take. And you could be thinking about putting that in your budget and have all this storm go away of special assessment. There was a lot of people that called in and said they don't want to pay anything. However, if we do pay, I wouldn't mind splitting 50-50. But a lot of those people said that, and the letters that came in. And what I'm hearing, they said, I don't think we should pay anything, but if we do pay. And there are some legal things saying that the dam is owned by the county, and people shouldn't have to pay to run something. We don't pay to run this building. We don't do a special assessment to run that jail. Well, that's a piece of property down there. It's theirs. And by law, they own it, and they bought it, and they gotta fix it. So I would say, an educated guess is, I think they should put that in their budget. If you divide that 20, let's just say 300,000 by 10, it's 30 grand a year. Some years it might be more, some years it might be less. This authority should come up and say, we think we should do this next year and not do that next year. Or we might say, you gotta do a lot here pretty quick. And after that, let it coast with Jerry. So I would say that we should go to the board and say, hey, you might wanna think about putting this in your budget. Here's the savings you can do. If you don't, you want a special assessment, here's what we think it's gonna cost. We should do that maybe in February.
My thoughts are that every time there's something big, they go to a special assessment. At the end of the day, the dam is owned by the county. That being said, people who don't necessarily want to pay for the special assessment, but have said, if we have to, so rather than spoil that relationship, why wouldn't we move forward with presenting to the county actual hard numbers that are very factual, and maybe come up with a way to break it down so it was something that they could digest every year, something that they could absorb, so that, God forbid, we ever have something that's catastrophic, and we had to go back to the riparians or the Lake Association say, we have a situation. We still have a good relationship with them where we could call on them in the future if we had to. Hopefully we don't. But if we build something, a budget where it's something that they could digest and we had that built in for 10 years or 15, whatever. So the money is there that we can, whomever's running the dam or operating the dam can maintain this dam. I think it's a better way to go. The riparians are paying a higher tax typically anyway for being on the lake. So, and they've paid in the past with special assessment. Do we need to go to a special assessment this time? I think that if we sharpen our pencil, we come up with a plan, a maintenance program that we know is going to work, and present that to the commissioners, I think that would speak volumes, so that if we did, for some reason in the future, need the riparians, we'd still have a good relationship with them.
So your conclusion is?
That I think that we should come up with a program with some hard numbers to do our budget of how much we would need every year to maintain and to fix the items that are
And not
outstanding.
put it on a special assessment.
And not put it on a special assessment, yes. Jim?
I think sooner or later, the well's gonna dry. We saw it in the last election all over the state. A lot of the stuff was shut down. And it's gonna happen around here, probably sooner than later. So we need to have the hard figures presented. And we can't hurry into it. We can't say they'll be ready next week. January, February, they may not be ready till March or April. We're all assuming that Russ is gonna be here the 18th. Well, we assumed he was gonna be here tonight. A lot of these other people have a lot of stuff going on. And until we get a definite answer from him, I don't see that we can set up a future meeting. Or will we go and all over this again? We need to know for sure and have something new. That's my thought.
Okay.
Sounds like we're on the train. It's a scary thought, isn't it?
What's that?
Item number 3.
What page?
I lost my agenda.
Schedule next meeting?
Yeah, if we have to cancel it, we can, but we should probably pick a date. And if we meet by Russ by then, we might have a better number and stuff. But we should look at when we want to meet. And you want to sandwich in something about,
Yeah,
So
I don't think we can set meetings until we get hard facts. Or we're just spinning, as people would say, we're just spinning our wheels.
So what's the chances of, so you're expecting Rusty on Tuesday, correct?
Right.
So let's say that Rusty comes in
Tuesday or Wednesday?
Wednesday, yeah.
Wednesday?
next week.
The 18th is Wednesday.
Okay, so Wednesday, and then how long does he project it's gonna take him to figure?
I won't know that until I
But
talk to him.
I guess what I'm saying, he's not gonna know that day.
Well, what I would like is I would like a date, and we can say, okay, our meeting date is gonna be, January 9th or January 16th. Those are 2 Thursdays that would work. Let's pick, maybe even pick the later one, and that might help us get more hard numbers, and we won't meet unless John and I have some really hard numbers to look at.
I'm thinking that should even be further down than that.
The trouble with going further is we're gonna get to field season, and we're gonna be into October. You know,
Yeah, but if we're
we
not
don't-
accomplishing anything,
Well,
I thought we did quite a bit tonight, actually. We went around the horn. We got some marching orders for John. I've got some marching orders. We are on our way toward hard numbers.
What do you
I think we accomplished a fair amount.
What do you think of this, Jim, if we set the schedule for January 16th? Only if we have the hard numbers from Rusty. Because
Yeah,
I
yeah,
certainly
You
don't
can
want to
cancel.
come back if we
I
don't
can
have
tell Rusty
something that's
that I
solid.
have those numbers.
Yeah.
Can we agree to that?
Yeah, that's what I was
See, I
gonna
can
say.
tell
The other
Rusty-
thing we have to check with is we have to check with the clerk to
She
see if
will. She'll let us
she
know.
has people available in that night's open. There was some doubt on this night because of some legal stuff, but it got worked out. I don't think we can set a hard deal until we talk to the clerk.
What time are you guys thinking?
Same time.
Same time? Well, it looks like for the 16th, it would probably work. The issues before that are things like the Board of Commissioners meeting for the week before. So we have tied up doing minutes for that to get ready for the regular session. So, except for on this particular day, that we have an organizational board BOC meeting on the 7th, and then the executive session is actually on the 14th, which is 2 days before that.
So the 16th looks good.
Well,
At this,
Great.
tentatively.
tentatively, as long as Michelle agrees that she has somebody available to take minutes for it, for sure.
Can you
Why-
shoot it
why-
at,
Why don't we set it, if it doesn't work on the 16th, we're gonna have to go farther out, right?
I could do the 20th. I mean, just one day.
The 20th is, it's closed.
It's what?
when is Martin
You're
Luther
in
King?
December.
When is Martin Luther King holiday?
That's the 20th of
That's the
January.
20th, so that's closed.
So that's, you're not open.
Correct. Any time that week after the 20th would also be available, though, it looks like.
Okay.
21st is probably, as late as I can go. I'm having surgery on the 22nd, so.
Okay.
21st at 3:45.
I don't like this afternoon thing. I'd rather do it like at 1 o'clock.
It's not doable for me.
Can you squeeze another half hour? Can you make it a little earlier?
They're staying way overtime.
Well, they're just, the quitting date time is fine, but can you meet a little bit earlier, I guess is the question.
I'm on the clock until 3:30.
Okay, moving right along, 3:45 on the 21st.
Do you want to put it at the 21st and not the 16th, or
21st at
21st.
3:30.
Let's do the 21st, that gives you guys a little breathing
Up.
room.
And hopefully, it won't take as long anyway, because we're not meeting unless we have hard numbers, because
Yeah.
otherwise we're spinning our wheels. So
Yeah, hard
it should be
numbers.
pretty cut and dry.
So I'll double check with Michelle on that, and
How many dates are off when they have that Martin Luther King? Do they have a Friday or a Monday off?
it's Monday, the 20th.
Okay.
We'll have to check with her. There's nothing else we can do.
I can take
They
it.
want us
I
to
kinda
leave.
like that. We can leave those up. I have a face for radio. Okay,
Move to adjourn?
No, we've got-
no, we have public comment.
Oh,
Public comment?
I'm ahead of you.
Yes. Public comment, please stand up and identify yourself.
My name's Jerry Collin, Maintenance Director, and I handle the dam. I work with it and the people. Question I have is, Steve, did you, I know I'm supposed to have an interaction, but let's wait for you guys to finish up. Pat Machin sent you that, the look of that screw jack for the dam, for the safety
He did.
lockout?
He did.
These guys get that? Did you send it out to them?
No, it hasn't, that, I didn't send that through to everybody, no.
Oh, okay, I didn't know, because he sent that idea, I was hoping they would have seen it. And that's something that he's, did you talk to him today? Did he call you today?
Not today.
Okay, he was going to, but he was on the road. I know he called me and returned my call from some other things. He's working on that idea and going to come back with, he's going to proceed with that lockout procedure. Do you want me to send that from me to these guys so they all?
If it's something that Pat's gonna move forward with.
That's what he's doing, 'cause you told him-
You can send it around, yeah, I liked
Okay.
it, but I mean,
Okay,
he,
I just didn't know.
he's been mulling over it.
They've been coming up with a plan, I'll make it quick, between the two arms, there's a screw jack cylinder, and it'd be like a wheel, and it would be at any angle that dam, the arms, this thing can be dropped down into it to connect, and it would be a lockout also. It would be set up where you can turn it. If the dam doesn't work, you wouldn't have to worry about any auxiliary. You can manually turn it to bring it back up or down. But then you pick it up and it hangs out of the way, so it won't be constantly turning. But it's a quick little video, about 10 seconds. It shows you what it does. But I was real excited about it, and it would kill two birds with one stone, so to speak. You know, be the lockout procedure, and it would also give us the opportunity or the ability to work that dam if the hydraulics and everything just went away for some odd reason. We could raise or lower that dam. It wouldn't be very fast, but it would be. So that's another. He's going to get numbers for us, he said, to come back. So I don't know if that was in part of this budgeting thing that we're talking about. I don't know if you guys put money in for that, but that's another thing we have to look at. I would suggest we look at for next year. You know, that's one of the biggest things is the lockout procedure.
Yeah, that's number one on the list.
Okay, that way we
So
can
the
go out there
numbers
and
that
grease
Let
manually.
him know that we need the numbers ASAP.
He said
We're gonna be
next
meeting
week.
in January.
He would get them to us tomorrow or next week. He's working on that, so I just want to let you know that.
Perfect.
So they're coming Wednesday, and they want to be done by the 24th with this project. That's what he said, right? So, yeah, hopefully we can get rock and roll on Wednesday next week.
So are you gonna send that to us, and there's a video
Yes,
from
sir.
that also?
It's just a quickie, you know, like 10-second. It shows you what it does, you know.
You can send that to our.
Yes,
mail?
I'll send it, email.
Yeah, I'd like to see it.
Perfect.
It just give you an idea. So I just wanted to mention.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Any
Thanks,
other
Sharon.
public comment?
Caitlin Watkins, just a private citizen. I wondered if you had considered, as we are looking at the budgetary concerns of this, at this time adding in something in terms of hydroelectric. I used to work in the renewable energy industry, not in hydroelectric though, in thermal and wind and solar, but wondered if we could add in a turbine as we're doing this, or as you're collecting your RFQs, if you wanted to throw that in and see the efficacy of that for this particular dam. If we could, it wouldn't initially, but over time, have this be something that actually makes enough money to pay for itself, so that we could ease that burden.
That's a great idea.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Okay.
I will. Patricia Sotis Little, County Commissioner, District 5, Leland and Centerville. First off, I want to thank you and congratulate you for the process you're going through, which I know is not easy, trying to gaze into a crystal ball and come up with hard numbers. But I do appreciate your effort to do that, because you are correct. Hard numbers make a huge difference. And I also thank you for your caring for our taxpayers, all of them. Now, my comments that I'm going to say here are my comments and my beliefs. I can't speak for the board, but I really appreciate your expressing your opinion about whether or not there should be an assessment or a budget, and I agree with you. I have not supported the concept of assessment unless the price got sky high, and it seems like kind of, what was it we talked about, going after a fly with a elephant gun. I mean, it's probably far beyond what we need. I think your plan of having a 10-year budget that would have to be ballpark or guesstimated as you get out further, but the ability to every year come in with good numbers, or every couple of years, and spreading the cost out over time makes a whole lot of sense. And if it's in the budget, it's manageable. So I'm really pleased to see that you're considering coming with that as a recommendation. The board hasn't decided whether to do the assessment or not. I know Laurie has gone ahead and her staff has prepared the numbers, which I'm sure you have. And that took some time, but to do anything more, I particularly was one who said I want to know what it costs first before we try to make that decision. I agree that the dam is the responsibility of the county. It is our property, and it's our responsibility. And I think that maintaining good relationships with the riparians is important, but it's also important to be fair. And I think I think it's fair to utilize taxpayer dollars because that's what they're intended for, to take care of these kinds of things that benefit all citizens. So thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for the time it's taking. I know this has not been easy, and you've had a lot of input. I know you're getting the same letters I'm getting, but I think the end result is going to be very good, slowing it down. There isn't a rush, so you'll come out with, I know, a fine proposal in the end, and I look forward to hearing it whether it's February, March, or April. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Thank you, Jerry. Authority member comment? Jim?
I made none, so.
I think we covered a lot tonight. I think that we need to stay focused in the fact that we definitely need as hard a number as we possibly can, just to make it fair to all involved. And I appreciate the two young ladies staying a little later tonight to help us out with this. So thank you. John?
I don't like meeting at 3:45.
Thank you.
I'm good. And so am I.
Meeting is adjourned. I would like to talk to the young lady about renewable energy.